Love podcasts, ain't nonsense. It's the PoliticsJOE Pubcast, ladies and gentlemen. Come on!
Oh my God.
Told you. I had to do it to him.
You're going to have nothing left.
Do it to him. Yeah, I am. I won't be able to speak for the rest of the podcast. I mean, the voice is getting stronger, I think. It's better than yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
No?
well, I mean, slightly. Now, I feel like you just exerted too much.
It hurts right now, actually.
Yeah.
Ava Santina, Capital J journalist. How are you?
Great to be here.
So bloody happy to have you here. And we're also joined by Cashman, you're known in the media as the hot Lib Dem, aren't you? The sexiest politician alive, but you are also the leader of the Lib Dems in Liverpool Council. So that's probably the introduction I should give you.
Yeah, please give me that introduction. But that's secondary, obviously.
How's it going, mate? What have you been up to?
Yeah, been all right. I've been working in London today. Bit sweaty because I've had to journey across London to get here, but other than that, I'm doing quite good.
Nice. So we're going to be doing our regular podcast thing, chatting about a few big stories of the day. I feel like we have to address the elephant in the room, which is that you have been described, as I just said, as the sexiest politician in Britain. So how does it feel, first of all, to be described in those terms in the media? It's usually a politician, right? You're usually getting absolutely painted by the media. It's usually a pretty bad time. So to get some positive headlines like that, it's probably fairly nice.
Yeah, of course. But not to say that I haven't been pasted by the media as well, Ollie. But it's a bit surreal, to be honest, because you don't really go into politics to be like the hot Lib Dem. Or someone said to me once, politics is the thing that people go into and they can't go into show business. So I'm hoping to God that isn't the reason that I'm getting called this. I'm just a 5 out of 10 or something.
You've still got time. Was the gym work? Did that happen pre-politics, or is that something you did? You got elected, and then you want a little bit of extra appeal, so you started hitting the gym a little bit.
You say that as if it's like you go with the gym for like 2 years, and then that's it. You just got
you're done.
Put the gym work in there, and then that's it. Now the politics.
That's how I thought it worked, but that's probably why I look the way I do, mate. To be honest with you,
I wish it worked that way, mate. But yeah, I was always into the gym since I was like 16 years old, so that's always been a thing for me. And then politics since I was 18. The gym obviously just got involved in it through being involved in PE in school, things like that. But then politics kind of was a bit out of left field. So I never expected to be involved in politics at all.
Okay. So how did that happen then? How did you get into politics?
So it was I watched the 2010 general election debates like the nerd that I am, and just really fell in love with that. Really liked what Nick Clegg was saying at the time. You don't say that word in Liverpool anymore, but at the time, I really liked what he was saying, and a lot of people around the country did as well. And then read the manifestos, and just what the Lib Dems stood for really stood out to me.
Okay, and obviously a lot has changed in the intervening period.
Oh yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, and you mentioned Clegg there, and that sort of, I call it like maybe a groundswell of optimism, right, towards the Liberal Democrats. More than 50 seats, a junior coalition partner, pretty heavily burned by going into coalition with the Conservatives.
Yeah,
and a bit of a road back for you guys to sort of navigate back towards electoral popularity again.
Yeah.
What was your read on that? Particularly, actually, go on then. So you read the manifesto, you like what you see, and obviously there's some, but not very many of those things actually happen in government, right? You get an AV referendum. Obviously, for people of our generation, you're probably talking about tuition fees, right? It's probably the most.
Yeah.
Not just something that didn't happen, but actually a reversal of it. So how did it feel for you during that time then, having seen a political party that you like, a political leader that you like, sort of navigating a path that perhaps wasn't the one that you were expecting him to? Yeah.
So it was difficult, but I'm always grateful for it now that I look back at it, because it was kind of a baptism of fire. So obviously getting involved at that time when the party becomes really unpopular, it really tests your resolve. And over the next 5 years, there was quite a few difficult conversations on the doorstep. And funnily enough, I was one of the first ones to go to university when those fees were introduced, the £9,000 fee. So I felt that just as much as anyone. And I'll be the first to say that we got so much wrong, where people involved were so naive. I don't for a second doubt that it was for the right reasons. I just think that it was naivety, and that was probably because we've never been in that position before. One thing it has made me is just really, really glad and know how lucky I am to be in the position that I'm in. So I'm glad that I didn't win straight away or have it easy, because it's made me realise, how much you should be grateful for winning.
Must be a hard fight in Liverpool being a Lib Dem.
Oh, it is. But what people forget...
I fucking love it.
Yeah, get me in the trenches. But what people forget is we used to run the council before 2010, and we ran it really successfully as well. At the moment, it's difficult, and people call Liverpool a Labour city, and I don't think it's a Labour city. I think it's a progressive city.
I agree with that, but I think that's because it's further to the left than Labour is at the moment.
Yeah.
So is there anything like that you're putting down that Labour aren't, maybe?
That's a good question. I mean, it's been 3 months now since I was elected leader, so it's still kind of bedding in those things. One of the things that I called for recently, and I've called for, all of my political life. I say that as a young person as well.
A storied career.
Been around for like 40 years. But I've always called for further devolution to Liverpool, and I think that that's quite a radical idea. And I think that people in the Labour Party have shied away from that because they like blaming the Tories for bad decisions. Whereas I think if you can take your own decisions locally, you can really have that control over your destiny. And I just think be brave enough to do that.
What's the sort of, if we look at like the national political picture and the way that Labour is sort of riding so high in the polls, right, compared to the Tories at the moment, what's the consequence of that been for you as a sort of, first of all as a Lib Dem, but also whether it's right or sensible to make that comparison and draw a conclusion from what's happening nationally on a local level with politics, like being a councillor?
So national politics influences local politics massively, and that's something that really annoys me because you put in a lot of work on the ground, and there's obviously the issues in the local community. So it has had its impact, and it's very hard to fight against that because you're basically fighting against the Labour Party locally that are very unpopular but are spurred on by the national polls. And it's quite, I find it a little bit strange, and I wonder what you think about this, because I think that it's a very shallow lead that Labour have got, not in the sense of how big it is, but what it means. Because I think it's people who just despise what the Tories have done rather than think Keir Starmer, he's the fella to get us through this. And in Liverpool, you definitely feel that. And, as you were saying before, people love radical policies in Liverpool, and they just don't see that in Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'd say the same thing on this, but I agree, right? I think that, if you look at the numbers, 20 points, 15 points, whatever it is, and obviously as far as national electoral politics has gone for a long time, that's a big polling lead. But you look at Keir Starmer's personal favourability, it's low. I think it's, as Cal said, right, I think there's a degree of people getting frustrated with government. I think people want an alternative, and as a result of that, because of our electoral system, that sort of frustration inevitably sort of ends up finding a home in the Labour Party. I think whether or not the scale of what's happened, I don't know if it would happen on the same scale if he hadn't moved the party towards the right. I don't know if I don't know, let's say Corbyn or even Miliband was still in charge of the Labour Party, whether Labour would benefit to the extent that they have done, because those kind of floating moderates, call them, I don't know, your sort of like Remainer Tories, One Nation Tory type people, maybe sort of home counties, the places where actually the Lib Dems are really challenging the Tories now. I don't know if those people, no matter how bad a job Boris Johnson was doing, no matter how bad a job Liz Truss has done, I don't know if those people would ever be able to actually accept voting for someone like Corbyn. And I wonder how much Starmer's pulling the party to the right means that they actually now will vote for the Labour Party in a way they wouldn't before.
It depends how heavily the Conservatives continue to bastardise the economy before the next election.
Yeah.
Because you vote Conservative to conserve your assets, right? And if you've got nothing left, you might go, well, better try someone else. But I just think that some of the policies or that Keir Starmer has been talking about the last couple of months are just not in line with Liverpool. Like, I think about free school meals, and I think that's an issue that is so important to the area. You've got areas of huge deprivation, but you've also got this real community I hate the word spirit, but spirit in Liverpool I don't actually think you get in a large swathes of the rest of the country. I mean, what kind of things come up on the doorstep that you don't think maybe Starmer is addressing?
I think the child benefit cap is one of them, and I think the fact that he doesn't want to commit on that just shows you how scared he is to lose that ground to those soft Tories, like you say. But you're right. Liverpool is a city of communities that all really care about each other, and these policies that he's putting forward, I just don't think they identify with any of them at all. In particular, in the city, you're probably getting things such as the NHS, like doctors' appointments, things like that. And I don't really think Starmer's saying that much about them, except for let's tighten our belts, we're in for a ride here, lads. And the people of Liverpool and probably other cities around the UK as well are wanting someone to say, hang on a minute, this is what we're going to do to offer you a little bit more support, because at the moment you've got people that are living in situations where they're wondering whether they can buy tea for the kids or whether they can go and travel on a bus to go to work. And it's incredible, and it's really upsetting actually when you see that. And those people look to people in the Labour Party and beyond, and it makes me sick to my stomach a little bit to know that there's Labour politicians in Liverpool that can watch that and then go and support Keir Starmer in Parliament.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a city deep rooted in trade unionism. I mean, it's forever, which is incompatible with Starmer at the moment. But then Ian Byrne, who is the MP there, well, for part of it at the moment, I mean, he is still a socialist MP. So is he not very popular? Oh
yeah, Ian Byrne's massively popular, and you might have heard about this, but there was they triggered a reselection in West Derby for him, and there's a lot of dirty politics involved in that. By the way, that's what I'm told. Obviously, I haven't seen it firsthand.
No, I've heard similar.
Or the guy who challenged him, I think he lost by about 3 votes, something like that. And it was a vicious campaign. Steve Rotherham, other people got involved, but that shows you the level to which the Starmerites and other people are willing to go to get rid of those more socialist-minded MPs. And don't take me wrong, I'm not a socialist. I'm a liberal, but I'm a progressive liberal, and I like to see progressive politics. And it's such a shame when you have a progressive party doing things like that to progressive MPs.
It's kind of what the sort of premise is, right? We've already mentioned sort of electoral reform once and the referendum on it, but if you are going to have a two-party system, the entire fucking point of it is that you have two parties which are broad churches, right? You have a Labour Party that can accommodate socialism along with liberalism. You have a Tory party that can accommodate fiscal hawks and social conservatives with, environmentalists and all the rest of it. And it's actually an interesting sort of feature of modern British politics is the way that both of the parties in any iteration have polarised, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's in the current instance of the Conservatives, actually, if to my mind, I've spoken about this before on the podcast, but is actually a very right-wing government. Rishi Sunak's policy platform is quite bizarrely socially conservative, particularly in contrast to Boris Johnson. But before that, a party of pursuing a really hard Brexit deal. The same way under Corbyn, the Labour Party becomes very, very socialist. Probably doesn't pursue a factionalist agenda in the same way that the Starmerites and the centrists have. And I think actually probably a lot of those people are regretting now not sort of being more aggressive and possibly purging a more centrist side of the party in the way that they have now been aggressively pursued themselves. Unless you're going to look at seriously reforming the electoral system, it's hard to imagine a world in which we strike out beyond those boundaries.
Yeah. Well, as a Lib Dem, you can probably imagine that I really agree with that.
That's what I was saying.
I've always supported electoral reform, but I think that's a really good point. So people have said to me in the Labour Party that the right under Corbyn weren't pursued nowhere near the amount that the left have been pursued under Starmer. And is that because the centrists and the right are more ruthless in the Labour Party and they see this as we're not going back there again? Or is it the fact that the ones who were the more left-wing types under Corbyn were a bit more accommodating? It's difficult to know from the outside, but it's a very interesting battle for the heart of the Labour Party.
My read on that is that Starmer is incredibly ruthless. I think when he makes a decision, i.e. to purge, for example, the Corbynite faction from the party, which is a gamble, by the way. You know, it's not. That's not necessarily that was always going to pay off, particularly on the financial side of things. You go after him. Yeah, okay, you kick him out, but then you alienate possibly hundreds of thousands of your paying members. As a mass membership organisation, there's a financial consequence for that. It's not necessary that it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows. They've now turned to sort of more corporate backers to fill that financial hole. And I also, my read on what you were saying as well, I think it was maybe tolerance, but from Corbyn in terms of not pursuing a purge as recently. I also think it was weakness. You know, he wasn't as politically assured. But essentially, every single member of the Parliamentary Labour Party at points wanted to get rid of him. Yeah, you know, in times, various investigations into the Labour Party since have found that he literally had, you know, backroom staff and MPs actively actually working against them to stop them from winning an election. Yeah. So I think they had
and the briefings against him were extraordinary.
I think he had a slightly harder gig, whereas now I guess Starmer has like control of the party apparatus, so it's easier for him to implement things like that, I think.
That what you're talking about there about Ian Byrne nearly getting deselected, that was incredibly ugly. It's not even like, I think we can kind of talk about it now, about the time they didn't want to bring a lot of attention to it, but then this wasn't coming from the Starmer factions. But I mean, there were like fights in car parks, there were brawls, it was really, really ugly what was going on there. It was like, it was quite mafia-esque.
Well, that's the Labour Party on Merseyside.
Organised criminal accusations. No accusations there.
No names anyway.
Just an organisation.
Do you know what? I think it's when an organisation or a party or people have been in charge of something for so long, they feel like it's their destiny to be there. And when you decide to challenge that, that's when you get that pushback, and sometimes the pushback can be a little bit ugly. And you know, Liverpool politics in general has been like that for decades. But you know, you had militants under Labour, and then you've had, you know, the issues that have happened with the ex-mayor and the corruption there. So Liverpool isn't a quiet city when it comes to politics, I'll tell you that much. But I would say that the same people have been in charge of things for too long, and they take people for granted. And that's why you end up with those situations when someone wants to change something, someone wants to change someone who's trying to do something for the community. I mean, you got voted MP of the year, for God's sake. And then they don't like that because he's got different ideas. I just think that's wrong.
It's a bit juvenile, isn't it?
It is a little bit, but I think that's politics in general, to be honest.
Yeah, okay, probably. Before we start to talk a little bit about net zero and maybe some 0 hours contracts if we've got time, you mentioned you started going to the gym when you were 16. What's it done for you?
I was wondering when you get back onto this.
Yeah, we'll get there. Tell me about sort of where working out sits in your life. Like, what's the difference it's made to you? Not just physically, but I guess mentally as well.
Yeah, so mentally, it's probably more mentally important than physically, to be honest. And I still go now at least 3 or 4 times a week. I just can't go a week without working out, because I would probably just go around the twist. It does a lot for me in terms of being able to think, de-stress, and conversations you have in the gym are a lifesaver sometimes as well.
Yeah, go on. So, what do you mean?
You just have some of the wildest conversations. Like someone was talking to me about jiu-jitsu one time, and like literally walked me through exactly what you need to do to be a jiu-jitsu champion. I was like, I'm never going to use this knowledge again in my life, but hey ho.
Was it Thomas?
But it's brilliant, and I wouldn't be able to live without the gym.
Is there much of a community? Where do you work out? Was it like a community place or like a chain? What's the story?
So it's the Lifestyles in Liverpool, which is council owned. But I used to go to the Village, which you won't know. There's a chain around the UK. I've been to pretty much.
You wouldn't know, not because you don't know Liverpool.
I know, it's because you in the gym. I didn't mean that by
That's an absolute fucking bodying. That is a bodying. Nice.
What do you think about community gyms then? I mean, like, you know, if you were, you know, you're to become MP one day.
Yeah.
Would you start campaigning for, I don't know, after school gyms? Like, do you think that's a good solution? When we talk about, sorry, I'm asking a really broad question what I'm getting at is that we've had people come on here before who like to go to the gym. And they always say that if you could get young people into the gym after school, that would change the social dynamics in the city they live in dramatically.
I think so. I was having a conversation about this the other week with the Director of Public Health in Liverpool, actually, and he was saying it's less about going to the gym and more about the behaviour change around like what you eat and things like that. So I think that's probably a big part of it, and it's difficult. It's a difficult solution. It's a multifaceted problem as well. But in terms of a community gym, I think it would be really good. A lot of people aren't, persuaded to go into the gym. They like, in Liverpool, they like football and they'll go to a football field. But from what I've seen, it's that a lot of people don't know what to do in the gym, and it's very intimidating in terms of the environment. So I think if you had a little bit more education around that, but that would probably need to start while they were in school, like physical education. And that's one thing where I think if I wanted to go into being like a PT or a football coach or something like that, I wouldn't have known how to do that through school, but I would have known how to go to university and college. And I think too often we send people down one route. And I'm not saying that community gym should be about, make people into PTs, but if you had, like a route into a career, you could use that and get
and a
people
lucrative one too.
Yeah, well, for some people, if you do the online PT, and now, God, you make thousands.
You're raking it in.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're talking to the public health guy or girl, I don't know. Sorry.
It was a girl.
Cut that. When you're talking to them, I mean, we're talking a lot about NHS waiting lists at the moment. Have you had conversations about the area, about like a multifaceted approach to public health like that? I mean, the school meals being taken away, local gyms being taken away. It's all connected, right?
Yeah. It's connected in a, it sounds like an oxymoron. It's connected in a loose way. Because at the moment, Liverpool doesn't have control over its National Health Service. It's still with the government, but Manchester does have. But it's connected in the sense that you've got like the CCG and the Council and the NHS that are all like kind of interlinked in those ways. But they don't speak to each other properly. So that's one of the things that we were talking about, and that would transform public health. If you could get those people speaking to each other, you would literally have a different environment to work from. And one of the things, so this is like a little bit off topic with that question, but I used to know someone who was a nurse, and they used to say that, like, if you had a bag of chemotherapy and it had the wrong person's name on, it'd have to go in the bin. You couldn't change the sticker; it'd have to go in the bin. So I think things like that, where like the NHS or the council or the CCG is wasting money, there can be a lot more common sense used with that as well. I know that's like a complete and utter tangent, but just sprung to my mind.
We love a tangent on this podcast, to be fair, don't we? So it's not necessarily a bad thing at all, mate. Should we talk a little bit about net zero?
Please.
Ava, what's the latest? There's been some murmurings. I say murmurings. I mean, for a long time now, it's been a bit of a pet project, right? Of kind of your Nigel Farage types, your GB News types to campaign for this referendum on net zero. But it appears to have gone a little bit further. He's accrued some political capital because of this whole debanking fucking thing. By the way, I saw was it Ben Smoke that tweeted today that how quick Priti Patel, Rishi Sunak, Suella Braverman were all to publicly talk about Nigel Farage's debanking. Not a word yet. Not a word yet on the two lads who got stabbed outside in Clapham in that apparent homophobic stabbing.
But that's because the banking thing was important, Ollie, because we all bank with Coots.
We do all bank with Coots.
And it affects the normal working man.
Exactly. It's a fucking shame. It's a damn shame. Anyway, so he's accrued his political capital, right? He's become a bit more relevant. And so now all of a sudden his cute little campaign to somehow allow people to vote on whether or not it's a good idea for us to try and reduce our carbon emissions.
Yeah.
What's going on with this, mate?
Okay, so let's go back to David Cameron.
We've done Clegg. Right? We've done Clegg. Let's go back. 2010 special, baby.
David Cameron was the Green Tory. He was elected on a Green manifesto, allegedly. For the next 10 years, we then had Theresa May, who set this wonderful net zero target of 2050. We are going to be net zero by then. Then we've had conversations at COP27, 28, whatever we're on now. It's like the Now CDs or whatever. I don't know what we're doing now. And then where the UN was like, guys, listen, this climate change thing, bad. Gonna need to get net zero a bit earlier on. So we were like, okay, we'll pull back. Let's float 2030. Let's see how that goes. Anyway, Nigel Farage then got thrown out of Coots. And somehow we've now got Conservative MPs on the red wall who are asking Rishi Sunak for a referendum on net zero. Because as you know, the reason that you can't eat right now, the reason that your energy bills are high, is not because Rishi Sunak is flying in a private plane across the world and not dealing with, any energy issues at hand. It's because of ULEZ.
Yeah, it is because of ULEZ. I mean, that's interesting. You mentioned Theresa May there, right? And that was actually a fairly... Were we the first? Were we the first country to do that? To sign it into law, to sign net zero? I think we could have been. Anyway, certainly pretty radical. Boris Johnson, many faults, but an environmentalist.
Green Tory he was.
An environmentalist.
And, big ULEZ guy, that guy.
Big ULEZ guy.
Some even say he came up with it.
Yeah, did he not do the first?
Yeah, no, he literally put it in, yeah.
Very good.
And then,
good,
behind the scenes as well, Grant Shapps as well. You know who else liked it? Him.
Yeah.
George Eustace, big fan.
And I saw as well, did I see when the COVID settlement stuff was happening for TfL's funding, that there was like a stipulation that there was going to have to be some kind of widening of ULEZ, or that he had to increase congestion charging and stuff because of this funding settlement.
Yeah, that was actually, that was a really great moment in time, wasn't it? It was Sadiq Khan went to the Department for Transport and was like, no one's using TfL, I've got no money. And they were like, well, then obviously you just need to put the cost up. And Sadiq was like, all right. And then all of the headlines briefed by the government were, Sadiq Khan is putting up ULEZ.
Shock.
Sorry, this is a really London-centric conversation. Have you ever considered a low-emission zone in Liverpool?
No, I don't think so. Although it could do with it, but I won't disturb what you're doing. I'll just take a seat.
let your little ULEZ combo happen.
Well, does net zero come up in Liverpool? It must do a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of environmentalists in Liverpool, and a lot of people who care about the climate. The air quality is really, really bad. So something like ULEZ, wouldn't be such a bad thing. But it's so strange because in Liverpool you've got these conspiracy theorists that have taken ULEZ and 15-minute cities.
Oh yeah,
and I don't know if you've seen this, but it's incredible. And they've ran with it to mean that you're going to get locked in these neighbourhoods where you can't escape.
Yeah.
So the fact that we want a shop down the road or a local pharmacy, that means that you're going to get trapped in those places. Very 1984 type of stuff. We're
going to give you a GP close to your home. Don't give it to me. I don't want it.
Did I see a story or something about an attempted sort of protest or something at the council over
Yeah, over 15.
Yeah.
Well, so they were protesting 15-minute cities, and what the council was adopting was a neighbourhood strategy, which is nothing new. It just means that you split your city into areas, and in those areas you have someone who looks after it, so that people can identify with that community, and you can have things within that community rather than citywide. So like a hub essentially. And these people conflated that with 15-minute cities, and they had all these strange banners saying, you're not going to take my freedom. And you can't put into words how silly that is, really.
I don't want to be a dick, but is that not kind of what already happens?
No.
Is that not kind of what already happens? Because you have catchment areas for schools and catchment areas for your local doctors and things like that, and no one's ever before been these shackles that are on me,
free me.
Yeah.
So it's not a new idea, and actually the model that the council's going to is the same one that the Lib Dems used to have when we ran the council. So
here we go, another drive-by.
Oh yeah, Lib Dems. Just trying to subliminally put that in every 5 minutes. But it's nothing new, so it's really strange how that can be taken another way. But I think in terms of the air quality in Liverpool, that's probably one of the biggest issues that you try and get a ULEZ type programme there for.
What's your buses like?
Crap.
Got to sort that first then.
I know, yeah. It comes to something when you've got the city centre and the waterfront, and you can't get from the waterfront to the city centre, and they're right next to each other. It's just crazy. And then, so I ran for Metro Mayor a few years ago, and we done some figures, and we found out that you could fly to Spain faster than you could get from Liverpool to Southport on a bus.
Really?
Yeah, and I just thought that's when it's a bit messy, the transport system. So yeah, you're right. We need to get that sorted first, and then maybe ULEZ
further
have a
conversation.
No, that's a really important point, though, right? Because people who make criticisms of ULEZ and to be fair, not all of them are cranks, will say that, yeah, okay, maybe in an ideal world, I wouldn't use my car to make these journeys, but I live in Plumstead or Woolwich, which are parts of London that don't have particularly good public transport connections. There's even like bridges right down
What
there.
are you talking about? What about the Woolwich ferry?
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, right. Because there aren't any fucking bridges down there. And I also think actually, right, there are people all over the country who don't live in London listening to Londoners being like, Plumstead doesn't have very good connections to the city centre. And they're like, are you fucking mental? I get a bus once an hour that takes me like to the next town and nowhere else. What do you mean? It's not very well connected.
But then if you look at what Manchester did with the buses, I mean, that was...
Yeah, no, and bus travel in London is also pretty cheap, like £1.50 hopper fare.
It's not actually. It has gone up. All right? So if we're going to be a transport nonce, actually be one.
Yeah,
right?
I know. Look, I'm only dipping my toe in a pool that you're up to your neck in already.
Do you know what? Do you know what happened to me last night? I've been waiting to tell this story. This is the saddest thing you'll hear all day, okay?
I'll be the judge of that.
Last night, I'm sitting in my living room, having a nice evening, look out the window. What's that? It's a bus. It's the 205. Buses don't go down my road. So I'm like, oh, what's going on here? So I get up. There's like a full-on riot going on the bus because it's taken a wrong turn and people are absolutely losing their shit. I'm alone in my living room like, this is amazing. It was the 205. I was so excited. That's the end of the story. It was a really exciting moment for me. Well, and then I've got no one to tell. So because no one wants to hear about the bus going the wrong route.
So now it's going out on a national podcast. Yeah. Now the world will know. In Liverpool, so like in you're right, it's a different conversation in London, but in Liverpool, I think the bus driver would probably just turn down a direction he fancied, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. Whereas in London, you need like 5 days notice in writing.
Yeah. That's good though. I mean, if you look at Birmingham as well, like when we're talking about low emission zones, if you drive past Birmingham on the, oh crap, I'm going to get the motorway wrong. Is it the M62?
Don't ask me.
M40.
No, the M62
London.
is Liverpool to Manchester.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
M40 out of London to Birmingham.
Yes. But you're not on that one. It's on another one that goes around. Anyway, they've made that 60 miles an hour because of the air quality. Oh. I mean, which is, it does always shock me that like you'll meet the kind of like the tradies or whatever who are normally pretty compassionate towards children because they have them, but will be against low air emission zones even though their children are choking on the fumes.
Look, it's really hard, right? Because who in their right mind is going to be like, no, we need more nitrogen dioxide in the atmosphere to give our children chronic lung conditions. It's not a particularly popular policy platform, but are then legitimately irate about policies that harm motor travel because as a society we are so reliant on cars. We are so reliant on them all the way through from urban planning. Think of name a new build estate, right, either in where you grew up, near where you live now, and it'll be a ton of houses. Some of them might have off-road parking. If not, they'll have parking outside the front of them. And there won't be any amenities in the estate, right? There will be amenities in a shopping park, let's say a 5, 10, 15-minute drive away. Yeah. And basically living there effectively without a car makes it incredibly difficult. There's a mad stat I saw. It's 80% of all journeys in Britain are taken in a car. Yeah,
and do you know why? It's because of this fact that I've just looked up. We don't have good public transport, right? For example, Leeds, largest city in Western Europe that doesn't have a metro system.
Yeah.
I had to check it because I wasn't sure.
I like that fact.
Yeah.
Like Liverpool has got an underground, but it's not a very good underground. I think, to be honest, if you look anywhere outside of London, you haven't got a good underground. And London fascinates me as a place where you can literally get from one place to another so easily. And it's really not the story around the whole of the UK.
Newcastle, not bad.
Is Newcastle all right?
Yeah.
Do you know, I've never been to Newcastle.
You should go.
I need to get myself up there.
On the M62.
Yeah.
That goes everywhere.
Yeah.
Where are you headed to, France? Take the M62.
But I think the issue with ULEZ and other environmental issues is that it's been so polarised, like you were saying before about politics being polarised, but this has been polarised to the point where you've got people who are so anti-ULEZ who think it's like the end of the world to impose this on people. And then there's reasonable people in the middle who are like, maybe like phase it in slowly so that people can get used to it and you're not like, charging people a massive amount who can't afford it. But then you've got the other side, like the Just Stop Oil side. And I honestly believe that Just Stop Oil puts so many people off the environmental case. And I think they're doing more damage than good. It's such a shame because they're standing for the right thing in a way, because it is true that the environment's on the edge of a catastrophe, but that's not the way to do it. And whoever's in charge for PR for them, I just want to take him and give his head a shake. Yeah. Honestly.
But then case in point there would be that they're just trying to not open any new oil fields, but they have been, their narrative has been kind of looped in with the ULEZ argument and the, dirty air argument. And actually, I don't think they care about.
I'm sure
I don't think they care about you. they're like, we're really just here for the oil fields.
Yeah, just here for the oil.
Drive what you like, guys. Using the old oil.
Yeah, you see the sea polluted like that. Just here for the oil, guys.
I really, I think it's a difficult conversation to have, right? Because you look at the polling, and it's something like, I think it's only about 15% of the public actually support Just Stop Oil, right? Because if you compare that to people who are actually concerned about the environment, there's a huge gap between those two numbers. And it's because of the tactics that Just Stop Oil have adopted, right? Whether it's sitting in the road, slow marching, getting up on top of the Dartford crossing or whatever, all that stuff that they do. And I hear that, but then the flip side of it for me is, if you look at recent years, right, Extinction Rebellion, like taking over Oxford Street and building like semi-permanent structures and closing down parts of central London for literally like days on end. And they've been doing that for a pretty long period of time now. I don't know if the environment gains the same level of salience in our politics without this extensive campaign of civil disobedience, protest, etc., that we've been seeing now for the last few years. Like, I understand completely, and people do, and people really are now pissed off with Just Stop Oil. I think in a way that actually they maybe not necessarily were with Extinction Rebellion, but I can't remember which group it was now, the ones who glued themselves to trains. That was XR.
Insulate Britain.
Insulate Britain, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, they did.
And XR, that guy, he like bike locked his like neck to a steering wheel on a car and just parked the car there and was like, "What are you going to fucking do now, lads?"
Got balls, like
yeah, he do have balls to do something like that. And
the thin neck.
Yeah.
Big balls and a thin neck.
Big balls and a thin, great combo. It's a hot combo. You do something like that.
You'd be fine.
What did you say?
You'd be fine. You should have landed that joke. Yeah. That should have been
I know, yeah. I was just going to say get a room. Like,
but without those protest movements and like people getting pissed off about it, I don't know if it gets the same amount of salience as a political issue without those protests happening. Is the way I kind of see it.
Yeah, I get that, and I think it's a good point. I think you've got that middle ground of people that you need to get on board, and to get those people on board, you've got to make changes without impacting their life massively. And it's about that slow process and soft power of like little touch. Like a football coach then for some reason.
Nice.
But I think most people would get on board with the environmental, with an environmental, strategy to get carbon down if they felt like it was going to be something that would, correlate with their lifestyle. If you got someone going to work and you got a fella in front of you on the road who won't let you go to work, that's going to put you off a little bit. So it's about helping these people to put these little things into their life where they can actually help the environment, but not doing massive stunts like Just Stop Oil are doing.
Well, that's why I didn't understand why Labour rode back on their big environmental policy, the energy policy, where they were going to open loads of new renewable energy sources. Because it's like, yeah, that's a big change to someone's ordinary life, having a new job. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you've got construction there, then you've got people to operate the site. You've got new towns probably popping up around there. I mean, it's just...
But this goes back to Starmer not wanting to do anything radical because he's too scared to do anything radical.
Here he goes.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox about Keir Starmer. But I think when his first speech, the conference, I think it was when it was in Liverpool, he mentioned about opening a British energy company, and I thought, I quite like that. It's a good idea. And then he's rolled back on that. He's even trying to get Sadiq Khan to roll back a little bit on ULEZ. it's like, how much of your soul are you losing here for the sake of gaining a few votes? And that's the problem with the environment massively, is it's so short term that we can't do anything about it, because you'll put a policy in place and in 5 years you'll need to change that to win people over again.
Yeah.
So it's difficult because you need to adopt a long-term strategy, but you need long-term planning to be able to do that. Maybe give it to the Lords and they get decision over it.
Yeah.
From net zero to 0 hours contracts.
Yeah, bang.
Yeah.
Go on.
Nice.
You're all week.
Go on.
What does that look like in Liverpool? I mean, there's news today. There's a good couple of million people who are now on unstable contracts, 0 hours contracts. People who are in your ward, do they like the flexibility of not, knowing when they're going to work, or do they hate it?
I think it's quite a divisive one, isn't it? And I think most of the people that I speak to actually quite like it. That's not to say that I completely agree with it myself. I know different people are in different parts of their lives where it might benefit them and it might not. And the example I'd give to that is, if you're a student, it's perfect for you, because 1 week you might have your exams and you might think, I can't work, and then another week you might think, I can do 20 hours here. But for a mum with 3 kids who's trying to get by and the only job that she can get is a 0 hour contract job, it's obviously not ideal, and she wants that permanence there. I think in Liverpool, there's like an attitude of people will do anything for the family. So if someone had to do a 0 hour job, they would do it, and they wouldn't do it happily, but they would put everything into it to make sure the kids are fed. So I think there's a positive to it in the sense that it helps younger people most of the time, and even older people sometimes. But obviously there's that downside to it where, a lot of people are stuck in that and they can't get out of it.
Yeah, I had one. My first job was a 0 hours contract, and it was ace because it meant I could keep my job whilst I was at uni, because I couldn't work. Right, I was away from home, and then back in the holidays I could work all the hours they gave me because they were there. But then conversely, some of my colleagues who weren't part-time student workers or whatever, who were there for full-time employment, who were also on 0 hours contracts, and it was their main source of income, it was how they paid their rent, it was how they paid their bills. When winter came around and there were less shifts going because the place was less busy, they're then having arguments with the management because they need extra hours. They need the cash, and there's none going. So yeah, you're totally right. It really depends on who it is, right? I think it's almost like it's fine if they exist and they're just sort of a thing that people can opt in for. It's less great when there's more than 1 or multiple million people on them, and it's become sort of like basically just like a relaxation of terms and conditions, a weakening of employment rights and hours and availability for people.
Yeah. When that is the case, I think it is wrong, and there is companies that take advantage of it for that reason. But I don't know why there isn't a middle ground on this, where you've got to have it in legislation or law that you say, after a year of someone being on a 0 hours contract, you've got to offer them a contract if they want a contract on the hours that they've been working regularly. I don't see why we can't do that. But it's probably because the government don't want to scare off these businesses, I imagine.
There's something just deeply evil in my head that you can potentially fall out with your manager or whoever's in charge of the rota, and then they could just rota you off for the next week.
Yeah.
Like that kind of like looseness to all of it just doesn't sit well with me.
That definitely happens as well.
Yeah.
I used to do a 0 hour contract as well, and you have people who have the favourites. You have that, all the time in any part of society. And I was fortunate enough because I was one of the favourites. But there was
got fucking tons of shifts.
0 hours contracts. But I do. My view is, in some circumstances they're right, in some circumstances they're wrong. And you can't put someone at the mercy of someone liking them or not liking them. Do you know what I mean? Because people have got different personalities. Some people work well with other people. So I think the government needs to take a look at it. I doubt they will take a look at it though.
Yeah, sure.
What constituency are you running in?
Are you voting for me?
Well, we'll see. What constituency are you going for?
I'm not running for Parliament. Yes, well, I used to want to be an MP, but I don't anymore, just because I see how much stick they get, and it's just it doesn't seem worth it.
Well, we've already discussed the headlines you get, pal. It would not.
Exactly.
It would not be fucking he's done a terrible job as MP. It would be sexiest MP in the country. So,
he's feeding the children.
It depends how long. It depends how long it takes and how long I can maintain this for. To be honest, if it's 10 years, then maybe not so.
But you know, if you have been in politics since you were 18, obviously you maybe have your eyes on doing something, progressing up the political ladder. You know, you started as a councillor. You're the leader of the Lib Dem Council now, the Lib Dems in the council now. So you know, bigger presence on the council.
Yeah.
Then perhaps, you know, a Metro Mayor's gig. What are we saying?
The Metro Mayor's gig.
I bet Ed Davey is round. Like, you've been with him today. Or you've been with him,
he was
recently?
in the office today,
He must have said something like, come on now, pal. I've got a few places I can stick you.
Well, we've got some really good people in the seats this year. You know, Tom Morrison in Cheadle, which is one of the closest to me, and Tom's amazing and a good friend as well. But in terms of what I want to do, like I want to take Liverpool Council back for the Lib Dems and change people's lives again. You know, some of the stuff that we did, we took the lowest band of earners in the council and we raised them up a band. So we eradicated the lowest band, and it's just, you know, things like that. You're impacting people's lives, and I think as an MP, you know, 1 of 650, sometimes you don't get that much influence.
Interesting. Okay. Cool. Well, should we call it there?
Yeah, nice.
It's been an absolute pleasure, mate, having you on. I know we've got no water left, but cheers.
Cheers.
We'll have one of these. Very good to have you with us.
Tell people it was water because at least
I'm telling
there was
people it was
some
water.
illusion.
Everyone who's been listening to this podcast knows what fucking mental state I've been in for the last 2 days. There's absolutely no chance I could have touched a
I
pint
did
on
suggest
either of
a
these
beer before
records.
you came in, and he honestly looked like he was dead behind the eyes. I was like,
Yeah, like Vietnam flashbacks to being in the streets of Prague, people throwing pints at me. Thank you very much for listening, guys. We will see you on the next one. Until then, bye-bye.